Here we go with the first set of notes in our cell division unit. This one a little bit of background on chromosomes and what they are and what they do for our cells. Before we get into chromosomes though, we just want to do a little bit of background on DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. I know we've talked about this before. First of all, what does it do? You probably remember it's the cell's instruction manual, right? It tells the cell how to make proteins, which is basically controls everything in your body. Where do we find it? Well, as long as we're talking about eukaryotic organisms, it's going to be in the nucleus. If it happens to be a prokaryote, it's just sort of floating around in there. And the thing about DNA is when a cell is small, the DNA can meet all of the cell's needs. Right? There is enough DNA to go around. But the problem is, as the cell gets bigger, it doesn't really make more copies of the DNA, but there's more demands being placed on that DNA. So as the cell gets bigger, let's say it needs more and more proteins to do its job, and it gets harder and harder to get access to the DNA to do what it needs to do. This is called an information crisis. And I like to think of it like many people sharing one textbook, right? So imagine if our class was small, if we only had 5 people in our class and we had 3 or 4 textbooks, no big deal, you could share a little bit. Most of the time, most people would have a textbook. But if we had a huge class and still only had, a class of 30 people and still only had that 3 or 4 textbooks, then it would be a lot harder to get access to that information. Or better yet, think of a cell phone. Would you even want to share your cell phone with one person, let alone with multiple people? So that's called an information crisis. So when the cell is small, the DNA can meet all of the cell's needs. But as it gets bigger, it doesn't have enough copies of that DNA to do what it needs to do. So moving on to chromosomes specifically, chromosomes are just another form of DNA. Chromosomes are really just tightly packed DNA. So if we look over here, we've got your DNA, and basically it just keeps getting more tightly and more tightly wound, and so you start to get this thread appearance, and then all these threads wind up on each other and coil and coil and coil until you get this more familiar X shape of the chromosomes. There's a couple different types of chromosomes. There's the sex chromosomes, which are what determine an individual's gender or their sex. Those are XX and XY. And for example, these pictures here are actual pictures taken from a bathroom in Seattle. And would you know which bathroom to go to? That was the only way they were labeled. There was no little picture of a girl in a skirt or a guy wearing pants or anything else. That's all they had. But I thought it was pretty funny because I knew exactly where to go. But it was interesting to watch people who had no idea where to go. So if you're a female, then you should be going into the bathroom on the left. And if you're a male, you should be going to the bathroom on the right. Males are XY and females are XX. And so then those are the sex chromosomes. And then everything else, all other chromosomes, are called autosomes. So that's the rest of the chromosomes. So 2 sex chromosomes, and the rest of them are autosomes. Now let's talk a little bit about the numbers of chromosomes that every living individual has. Basically, every cell, at least for animals, every cell has 2 copies of each chromosome. Why would you have 2 copies of each chromosome? Well, you get 1 copy from mom and you get 1 copy from dad. And we call these homologous pairs. This is really important, a homologous pair, because they're the same, right? You get 1 copy from mom, 1 from dad. Remember, homo means the same. Think homeostasis, meaning same state. So 1 from mom, 1 from dad. They're basically identical. They have the same information, but they could have slight variations of that information. Okay? Now, specifically, if we're talking about humans, humans have 46 total chromosomes. We have 2 sex chromosomes and 44 autosomes for a total of 46, and these are divided up into 23 pairs of chromosomes. So 46 total, 2 of each one for 23 total pairs of chromosomes. And just so you can visualize these, you don't actually have to write this here if you don't want to, but this is called a karyotype. It's a tool that we use to look for genetic abnormalities, and you can see how we have all the chromosomes are all numbered and lined up. You've got 23 pairs plus the X, is 22 plus X, this is the 23rd pair. So 2 X chromosomes, this individual is a female, and you can see how there's 2 copies of every chromosome being identical in size. And then this individual actually has something wrong with them, and maybe you spotted it already. This person has an extra chromosome here. So you have 3 number 21, so we're going to talk about that at a later time. And finally, the last thing we're going to talk about for this set of notes is the difference between haploid and diploid cells. So in your body you have 2 different types of cells. They're haploid and you have diploid cells. Haploid cells are cells that have only 1 copy of each chromosome. So they don't have that homologous pair. Right? We abbreviate them by saying they're 1N, and these are found in your gametes, or your sperm and your egg cells. These guys have only 1 copy of every chromosome. So then your diploid, as you can probably guess with the term di in them, these guys have 2 copies of each chromosome. And we abbreviate them as 2N, and these are found in all other cells. And all these other cells are called somatic cells. So why do you even need haploid cells? What's the point of haploid cells? Well, to do that we have some pretty complicated math that we have to go through, so see if you guys can keep up. First, 1 plus 1 equals 2. All right, so by that logic, 1N plus 1N equals 2N. Haploid plus haploid equals diploid. And then finally, my favorite equation in biology, sperm plus egg equals baby. Okay, so you need to have a half of the chromosomes plus another half of the chromosomes equals a full individual. Right? That's the whole point of sex, biologically speaking, is to make a new baby that is basically half mom and half dad. So every organism has a haploid and a diploid number. So for humans, our diploid number is 46. So all of our diploid cells have 46 chromosomes, and the haploid number is 23. Our sperm or our egg cells have only 23 chromosomes in them.